You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, and... oh, I forget. Amber and Scott discuss Firebrand, which follows Catherine Parr, the final of five-time loser in love Henry VIII's wives. That guy sure had a thing for people named Catherine. At least he didn't have to worry about using the wrong name. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
You find yourself in the unique position.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
What would you do?
How do you want to handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
Off with her head! Alrighty, this week we are talking about Firebrand. Firebrand follows legendary Queen of England Catherine Parr in her quest to survive the perilous last months in the life of her ailing and abusive husband, King Henry VIII. And we all know about King Henry VIII, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I see this in modern society, but it was a little more pronounced with Henry VIII here. So you're going to be wife number 6, and you're looking at the 5 ahead of you. Of them, 2 of which have been divorced, and 3 of them died, 2 of which we know didn't die under natural causes unless a blade coming across your neck counts as a natural source for 2 of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess you don't have a lot of choice in that scenario. If the king wants you as his wife, you're probably
It's
stuck.
not a question.
You're probably stuck, but you're like, this hasn't gone real well for the last 5, so
Yeah.
but
Catherine Parr, she was savvy and intelligent and really knew how to play the king. Unfortunately, at the end, that doesn't matter. But she was a very intelligent person who saw the situation for what it was and could very easily navigate the intricacies of not only being queen but in handling King Henry VIII.
yeah,
But you brought up a good point there about what if the king wants to marry you, and what your choices are. So, what we do here, obviously, for the newcomers is we don't necessarily review movies, but we look at what we would do if we were in the character's shoes. And boy, if I were living in that era and the king wanted me as his bride and I really didn't have any choice because you're just not going to say no to the king. Wow, that would be a terrible situation to be in.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's got its ups and downs. I mean, you go from nothing to royalty.
The food gets better, but, also everyone wants to kill you.
Yeah, especially when there's a lot of paranoia amongst the king, insurrection and
Yes.
stuff like that. So it seemed like Catherine didn't mind aiding that a little bit.
Yeah, it was the other thing, too, is obviously we talk about the ailing king in his final months. And wow, talk about some gruesome wounds. He came back to the estate because he was having leg problems. And you don't really know what the leg problems are until you realize he basically has a massive gash hole in his leg that won't heal, and he has an infection spreading throughout his body. And at one point there is a scene where the hole in his leg is full of maggots. Wow, talk about jumping up in your seat. That was disgusting.
Yeah, you got to use some water or something. I mean, I know you don't have any Bactine yet, but Jesus, get that thing washed off somehow, even though it's going to hurt like hell.
Yeah, I mean, when you have something that's truly rotting flesh, it will attract flies, which in turn will turn to maggots. So I don't know if in that day and age there's really a lot you can do. Even though it was wrapped, it was still just putrid. And, what would I do in the situation of so many of his subjects of, for instance, in that scene, they're trying to pick the maggots out of his legs, and obviously it's painful, and he screams and kicks at them and throws them and then says, "Oh, Catherine, I want Catherine to come and help me." And Catherine, being the dutiful wife, has to go over there and pick maggots out of his leg. Oh my gosh. So gross. But what would you do? I guess you just do what the job entails because you really don't have a voice in that situation.
Yeah, and that's the problem here. We like to do what would you do, but this is the 1500s, I believe. What you do is you do what you're told. I mean, it's really, there's not a lot of room there for otherwise, because if you don't, they kill you. And sometimes even if you do what you're told, they try to find a reason to kill you.
Yeah, and, on that note, Catherine certainly didn't always do what she was told. She snuck out of the castle at one point where King Henry was away, and she went to visit an old friend who was actually trying to build an army of resistance to fight the king and to dethrone the king, and gave her a gift, unfortunately, that linked her back to her visit, which was a necklace she had received from the king. So she did it not as in a way to fund the efforts to overthrow the government, or overthrow the king rather, but as a support for her longtime friend of, use this, sell it to take care of yourself during the winter months. And that unfortunately went terribly awry, as that later came back to haunt her, which got her thrown in the dungeon or the basement behind bars with very little food and begging for her life.
Yeah, you think in today's day and age, it can be concerning about who you associate yourself with. Back then, they don't just have you talking, they have you killed based on who you were associating with. So, yeah, and it's another one of those, like, we do like to look at what would you do, and it's just difficult in this situation. I mean, about the only what would you do I could look at is if you're Henry VIII, I'd try to be less of an asshole, but it's kind of a hallmark of being Henry VIII is that you're kind of an asshole.
Yeah, stick with what you know, and he was really good at that. Boy, just a messed up man with too much power who didn't truly appreciate what anyone around him might be feeling or experiencing, and it was truly all about him and his wants and his needs, and everyone being there to service him.
I mean, if you're willing to go to war with the Catholic Church at that day and age and come out basically with your own religion there because of it, I don't think there's a limit to what you're willing to do and whom you're willing to do it to. Like, because that's pretty much your pinnacle of anything at that point is the church. And to go up against them and get excommunicated, and it's not like he's going to all of a sudden be nice to someone else. I mean, he's going to do what he wants regardless of the situation. And, well, he wanted a boy, and that wasn't really happening.
Yes. Catherine, when she found out she was pregnant, was very happy because she also understood that could help guarantee her safety and good standing with the king. But unfortunately, in one of his deluded rages that I believe was likely exacerbated by drinking too much and also the infection spreading throughout his body and creating a fever and whatnot, accused her of cheating and threw her around, at which point she lost the baby. And she's desperately trying to push the baby back into her and realizing that if she does not have that level of protection, that she is truly at the mercy of whatever the king might want to do in retaliation for that argument and physical altercation that they had.
Yeah, it's wasn't the best time in the world to be a woman. And even if that woman was queen.
Yeah, that's so true. And, when you think about what would you do if you were in Catherine Parr's shoes, I actually see myself following a similar suit of doing the things you needed to do to ensure your safety, but also trying to find the ways of honoring who you are. Like when she went to find her friend preaching in the forest to give her some sort of aid so she could survive out there since she had no resources, or when Catherine wrote a book and trying to share her thoughts and opinions with the populace. So she did a really good job of staying in line, but also pushing beyond the boundaries that likely weren't tested prior to her doing some of those things.
Yeah, what would you do? And it's mostly whatever you need to do to survive.
That.
So, well, this one's a little shorter here. Any final thoughts?
The one I just had.
Okay, well.
That.
Off with her head!
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release at least 1 and generally 2 to 3 episodes a week, so we have new content regularly. Until next time.